All right, let's get into a story you think you might know. It's a 3,000-year-old mystery packed with incredible treasure, a forgotten king, and of course, a terrifying curse that promised a swift death to anyone who dared to disturb his final rest.
So picture this. This is the warning, the legendary curse that was supposedly carved right at the entrance of the tomb. Now, for a while, people just wrote it off as, spooky superstition. But then, a string of really strange and tragic events started happening, and it made everybody question everything.
For Lord Carnarvon, the wealthy guy who paid for the whole expedition, this warning became terrifyingly real. Just 5 months after that tomb was opened, he was dead. And get this, the very moment he died, the story goes that all the lights across Cairo flickered out. And at the same time, his dog, thousands of miles away in England, just howled and dropped dead. I mean, come on, that's just way too much to be a coincidence, right? But to really get a grip on the curse, we've got to rewind the clock a few months. Because this all starts with one of the most incredible archaeological finds in history. A discovery that happened because one man was obsessed, and another was just about out of patience. The two men at the center of all this couldn't have been more different. You had Howard Carter, this super determined, self-taught Egyptologist, and then Lord Carnarvon, his rich sponsor. Now, by 1922, they'd been at this for 15 years. Carnarvon had spent a fortune and had absolutely nothing to show for it. He was ready to call it quits. Carter basically had one last season, one final shot to find his lost king. The pressure was on.
And then, just when hope was almost lost, bang, a breakthrough. November 4th, 1922. A worker finds a single step cut into the rock. That one step led to a whole staircase. And at the bottom, a sealed door. After they cleared away all the rubble, Carter could finally read the royal seal. The name was Tutankhamun. He'd done it. He had actually found him.
So on November 26, Carnarvon is right there at Carter's side. Carter makes this tiny hole in the door, holds up a candle, and the flame just flickers as this 3,000-year-old heir rushes out to meet them. Can you imagine? Well, after a few moments of just stunned silence, an impatient Lord Carnarvon asked the question that literally everyone was thinking. Carter's simple reply has to be one of the greatest understatements in all of history. Because what he was looking at, it wasn't some empty, robbed-out chamber. It was a treasure trove. An antechamber just packed to the ceiling with golden chariots, statues, furniture, all of it untouched for over 3,000 years. It was, without a doubt, the discovery of a lifetime. The world went crazy for this discovery. It was a global sensation. But right alongside all the excitement, dark shadows started to grow. After Lord Carnarvon's shocking death, a whole series of bizarre, tragic things began to happen. And that's how the legend of the curse was truly born. Suddenly, the list of victims started getting alarmingly long. A rich financier visits the tomb, then dies of a sudden fever. Carter's own secretary dies from blood clots. And you can bet the newspapers were all over it, just fanning the flames. Every new death was a new, terrifying chapter in the story of the Pharaoh's revenge. By 1929, the so-called body count had shot up to 22, and 13 of those people had been there when the tomb was first opened. This created this powerful, terrifying story that was honestly pretty hard to argue with at the time. And then came this detail. For a lot of people, this was the moment the story became undeniable proof. During the autopsy on the mummy, they found a small lesion on Tutankhamun's left cheek, the exact same spot as Carnarvon's fatal mosquito bite. It was presented as the ultimate chilling connection that linked the long-dead king directly to his victim's fate. So this begs the question, right? Who was this king whose eternal sleep was apparently so violently protected? And why was his tomb, unlike pretty much every other one in the Valley of the Kings, left completely alone for thousands of years? While Tutankhamun's life was short and honestly pretty painful. He was the product of incest, a brother and sister, which was common for Egyptian royalty, but it left him with some serious genetic problems, like a club foot. He became king when he was just a kid, during a time of total chaos. His father had turned the whole country's religion upside down, and Tutankhamun spent his short reign just trying to clean up the mess and bring back the old gods. He was seen as so insignificant, just this brief blip in history, that the pharaohs who came after him literally tried to delete him from existence. They scraped his name off of monuments and official king lists. But here's the irony. That act of erasing him is exactly what saved him. Tomb robbers never looked for his tomb because, as far as they knew, he never existed. So it just sat there, hidden and perfectly preserved. Okay, so we've got this amazing, terrifying legend built on coincidences and fear. But here's what's so fascinating. When you shine the bright light of science and just plain logic on it, the whole thing completely falls apart.
Let's just break it down, shall we? That famous curse inscription? Yeah, it never existed. A journalist completely made it up. Those mysterious fevers? Modern science points to toxic molds and fungal spores that could have been growing in that sealed tomb for 3,000 years. Nasty stuff. The big Cairo blackout? Turns out power outages were super common back then. And that matching lesion on the mummy's cheek? Just a sensational story cooked up by a rival newspaper.
And look, the numbers really don't lie. A 2002 study in the British Medical Journal crunched the numbers on 25 people who were there when the tomb was opened. And guess what they found? They lived to an average age of 73, which is actually a little longer than a similar group of people who were in Egypt at the time but didn't go in the tomb. If anything, it looks like the curse gave them a few extra years. But let's just think about this logically for a second. If there was a real pharaoh's curse, who would be its #1 target? It would have to be the guy who actually broke the seal, the guy who walked in first, the one who opened the sarcophagus and physically handled the mummy, right? Howard Carter, the man at the absolute heart of it all. He lived for another 16 years. He died of natural causes in 1939 at 64 years old. He outlived almost everybody. The curse, if it was real, somehow managed to completely miss its main target. So, okay, if this isn't a story about a spooky supernatural curse, then what's the real story here? Well, I think it's something much deeper. It's a story about being erased, being rediscovered, and achieving a totally different kind of immortality. The ancient Egyptians had this belief, that you only truly die when your name is spoken for the last time. For 3,000 years, Tutankhamun was well and truly gone, forgotten. But then, this one obsessed archaeologist gave him a new life, and in doing so, made his name one of the most famous in the entire history of the world. For the rest of his life, whenever those reporters would hound him about the curse, Howard Carter had a simple, factual, and pretty much perfect comeback. He just stated the obvious. And that, right there, is the beautiful, final twist in this story. Thanks to Howard Carter, the boy king who was deliberately erased from history was given eternal life. The ultimate magic wasn't some dark curse. It was the rediscovery itself. And now, Tutankhamun, all thanks to the man who disturbed his peace, can say the exact same thing Carter did. I am still alive.